Well, there is one thing to say about progressive rock is artists don't tend to sit down. They just keep on going. So, let's dive into another one. Chameleon Shapeshifter by Antony Colgan. So Antony is kind of the multi-instrumental brainchild of a very prominent retro prog band of Carfagan. I really love that outpour. It's very much like a kind of a traditional retro prog, very symphonic in approach, very happy in sounds, longer stretches of music. And he also has his own solo career, which is where we're seeing here. And I mean, this guy doesn't stop. Last year, he put out two albums, he put out three. Two under the Carfagan banner with Birds of Passage and Principles and Theories of Skeptra. And I enjoyed both of those very well. But he also put out one album under his own moniker, which is Marshmallow Moondust, which I also really, really enjoyed. I felt like Marshmallow Moondust, which is really just two songs, Marshmallow and Moondust, did a very good job of just providing some very enjoyable, non-offensive, kind of paint-by-numbers retro prog. And the same can be said about the follow-up, the other album that he released this year under his own banner of Stellar Garden. And again, I like the growth that Antony is bringing to the table. I love the dynamic shifts that he's bringing into this. And now we have another album from his own name, of Chameleon Shapeshifter. And this one is just slightly different than the other two, where Marshmallow Moondust and Stellar Garden was like a 1-2 punch, both holding one half of the title name. So you had one track being like Marshmallow, another track being Moondust or Stellar and Garden. In Chameleon Shapeshifter, you still kind of have that a little bit, but where it differs is the album opens up with Chameleon being about almost 20 minutes in length, and then the second track of Shapeshifter being 6 minutes, and then you have four other smaller tracks ranging from almost 8 minutes to just over 4 minutes. So it allowed Antony a little bit of chance to kind of try his feet in some of these smaller tracks. Now, what I will say is it is, once again, a progression in style. It's Antony growing as an artist, growing as a musician, and really showcasing that evolution. This holds some of his best music that he's written and composed. The dynamic flow within the larger track of Chameleon showcases really well how he's able to move from one piece of the music to another piece without losing the flow. This doesn't really have any kind of repeating motifs or repeating themes. It really is just an exploration of sound. It's going from one passage to another passage and to another passage. This allows him to really stretch his legs musically in that sense that he's done in the past. And it does hold some of the best music that I've heard from Antony thus far. There's a moment within the first half of this track that I gush about. It's very symphonic. It's very brilliant. It's very large and big. He's using some harmonies within a female vocalist that I really, really appreciate and I enjoy. I love the interplay between all the different musics and sounds to create a very larger scale of music. And Shapeshifter continues the flow that Chameleon put down, and it provides probably the greatest moment of music, but it is still on the first half of the track, and I feel like that's something that is really felt on here. Like, Chameleon and Shapeshifter are definitely the two best tracks off of this album. They showcase the best work on it, and in that sense, it's very front-loaded. And especially within Shapeshifter, even though it's just over 6 minutes, that first 3 minutes is probably the best piece of music on this, and by the time we get into that later 3 minutes, it does start to fizzle out a little bit. It does run out of steam, and unfortunately, that kind of running out of steam is felt on the last 4 tracks as well. Exceptional Chamel Ballad, I think it is, House on the Hill, Wondrous Glory, and Key. These last 4 tracks, because they're a little bit shorter, don't really hold that same kind of a punch. They don't allow the music to really blossom into something exciting, and it's a little bit of a downer. It does allow, as I mentioned, it does allow Antony to explore a little bit more in these shorter movements. It allows him to test the waters a little bit more without having to commit to a larger suite of music. But the drawback to that is if the song doesn't work, because most of these are instrumental outside of the last track, it does suffer because the track doesn't really go anywhere all that interesting. And this is kind of across those 3 tracks. Key is probably the only exception to this because it's the only one with lyrics on it. But even still, it doesn't really jazz me all that well. It doesn't excite me. There's not a whole lot of teeth on it. Some of those higher moments are only really felt at that beginning part. Now, all this being said, this album still is Antony's probably best work to date. I think that it is another step forward in his discography, and it's allowing him to stretch his legs. I love the fact that he was able to experiment a little bit more on this one, try a few more things that I think he will then use and implement on albums going forward, whether that's with his own self-titled work or if that's going to be under the Carfagan bandwagon. So, you know, it's definitely a little bit of a mixed bag because when this album hits, it hits hard. It's some of the best music that I've heard this year, and it allows me to just close my eyes, let that really brilliant prog really usher us through. But when it doesn't hit, it is a little bit of a dud in that sense. The best comparison that I can give to this kind of a sound and what Antony is putting down is some of the 80s albums that, say, Mike Oldfield put out, especially those albums that had one track side. We're looking at like 5 Miles Out, Crises, or Discovery, where half the album is brilliant and I'm loving the sounds that are on it. The other half is just kind of serviceable at best. So it allows me to enjoy those moments that I really, really love and then appreciate some of the more experimental parts for kind of what they are, just kind of testing the boundaries and seeing what kind of comes out of that. So in that case, I will say that I still thoroughly enjoyed this album. I still get a kick out of it. I've been listening to this album for a very consistent amount of time, and I've yet to really find my diminishing returns on this, which is really saying something for a retro prog outfit, because I do feel like, especially with retro prog, after a while you start to diminish returns, but I feel like this one, the more I'm listening to it, the more it's giving back to me. So in that sense, I will at least say that Chameleon Shapeshifter is one that I will absolutely pick up in physical format if I can find it. I don't know if this one will be available on LP or record, but if it is, I will 100% pick it up because those moments that shine bright enough to own on physical format. So that's kind of where I'm at for Chameleon Shapeshifter. Where are you with it? Have you listened to it? If you haven't, I do recommend it. It gets the note seal of approval in that sense. And let me know what you thought about it. If you loved it, if you hated it, let me know by commenting down below. If you like what you see and you want to support me, consider donating to my Patreon. I've left the link down below. You get your name at the end credits, and yeah, even $1 a month does go quite a long ways. So yeah, and I think that's about it. That's about it. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.